The Collective Whisper Podcast with Simon K. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Collective Whisper Podcast. My name is Simon K, and we're here to bring you another great guest today. But before we get to that guest, we hope you are well, and we hope you're enjoying the content so far, and we ask you, please subscribe and share the show wherever you can. Tell people all about it. This week, we're going to talk to Brendan Courtney. Brendan Courtney is an Irish TV presenter and fashion designer. He was the first openly gay presenter in Ireland. Brendan Courtney has hosted and created countless TV shows, formats and documentaries for over 20 years. Beginning his television career as a TV researcher in 1998, he fronted his first TV format, Wanderlust, which he then sold to 19 countries. This kickstarted his award-winning career, which has taken him from the BBC in London to Bravo in LA. Now the host of RTÉ1's coveted Sunday night 8:30pm slot with his hit original format, Keys to Your Life, Brendan has become known as a trusted, entertaining and empathetic host. Welcome to the show, Brendan Courtney.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here today, and you're an interesting character, to say the least, and I think you've had a very varied career, and you've had this kind of career that spanned different areas, and now, Keys to Your Life, and you're involved in fashion, you're involved in so many different things, and you're, a great spokesman for diversion and inclusion and everything. That to me is an interesting person. There's lots to talk about. You know what I mean?
But they say, I always hang on to the adage that any truly successful people have at least 6 revenue streams. So I've always aimed for that.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing as well. But it's not just revenue streams either. What it is a lot of the time, it's passions, isn't it? It's passions.
Yeah, of course. For me, they're all linked. To be honest, I can see the path as a thread through it, but they can look like, I suppose, quite different things. But for me, they're all pretty much linked.
When you look at where you are now and what you're doing, could you have seen this back when you started? Could you have seen like the evolution of your career like this?
I mean, interestingly, when I started in television, I decided when I was 19, I wanted to be a TV presenter because I had been an actor in the Dublin Youth Theatre from the age of 14 to 19, which is a free youth theatre for sort of inner city kids. So it was very grassroots and it was kind of free to go, like 90p on a Saturday or something. It was kind of like a youth club, but it was theatre. So I'd done acting. It was still illegal to be gay in Ireland. I had decided consciously, really, that I was quite camp as a kid. I couldn't hide that I was gay. It was very obvious that I was a bit different. And so I got ribbed about it and bullied and all that stuff. But I decided, actually, I didn't want to act as somebody else. I'd spent my whole young adult life acting. So I thought I want to be a presenter. So I want to do a craft that allows me to show off and get attention, which is basically what I was craving because my parents were unemotionally available as a child. Whole other story. But and I decided presenting was the way. So then I decided, actually, I want to write formats, present them, and put the package together, kind of like a movie director, but for television. That's in my head roughly what I thought of it. Create work, and also, I thought, well, I don't have a mortgage at the time, and I don't have kids, so I have space to experiment, and I don't need much to live on, so I can try creative. So that was really sort of my motivation. And at the start, having a Sunday night TV show would have been on my agenda. And now, 20 blah, blah years later, I have a Sunday night TV show and it's successful. So I suppose, bigger picture pulling back, I would have hoped by this age, I would have a nice RTÉ1 or BBC One TV show. And I suppose, so, God loves a trier, so tenacity paid off.
Well, of course, yeah. And I suppose all those, when you started back as a TV researcher in 98, and I'm sure you had great ambitions, but as a lot of people know, in any kind of industry, when you go in at the beginning, grassroots, and you're thinking, how do I make those steps? How do I work my way up? And, sometimes people, I think, on the outside assume it's who you get to know, it's networking. But, like you said there, you have to kind of sometimes prepare that perfect package or good pitch, and I suppose then meet the right people.
As I said, I was in National Youth Theatre, and then I got into the Dublin Fringe Festival as a sort of admin, kind of, working in the office, working for the director, actually, Ali Curran at the time. And then I was approached to go into Riverdance, and this was my break into Tyrone Productions, who I knew were a big production company who owned Riverdance. So I said, yeah, I'll do whatever you want on Riverdance. And my job was to sort of do the admin for the visas for the Russian dancers. So I got to tour. The whole time I was there, I was going across the garden in Hatch Street. Owen Productions, which is Riverdance, had the Muse building. And Tyrone Productions had the house. So there was a bit where everybody met for a smoke. And so you'd meet the telly people. So I was very, I would always be out there talking to the telly people, coming down from Riverdance, going across there and telling them ideas and blah, blah, blah. And then how I actually got in, I suppose it's a lesson to the wives as well. So I was like 25, 24 at this stage. Oh no, 23, 24, I think, right? So, but I wasn't 19. I was in my mid 20s. And I took 2 weeks holiday that I was due because I was on salary in Riverdance. And I went and I asked, could I work for free on open house? So I took 2 weeks holiday, and they were really impressed that I did. They were like, why are you here? I said, well, I took 2 weeks holidays. I really want to work in television. And that really impressed the producer. He's like, you took your holidays to come and work here? And I was like, yep. So I worked for 2 weeks, and I attached myself to this senior researcher who was actually doing a big piece on Billy Barry, who, the Billy Barry school, Billy Barry kids. And she was doing a big piece on Billy, who I think was 80 at the time, or maybe 75 or something. So I said, I'll help. So I attached myself to this woman, Liz, and she liked me because I was doing all the heavy lifting for her. And I actually took to it quite well, and I loved it. And then the next season, they offered me a job as a researcher. But I took a day and went in and worked for free. And I'm not advocating that people should work for free. I think we pay our interns, and we should all respect people's livelihood as well. But in fashion and in television and in film, to show real ambition, and especially in music, looking at behind you, you do your craft because you love it, right? So the money is the second part.
Well, I think 2 weeks is not an awful long time for anybody. See, nowadays, if someone's going to be an intern and they're, 6 months or a year, it's a long time. And, you kind of look at the paymasters and say, okay, can you not pay them, whatever. But if someone says, I want to work for you for 2 weeks and show what I've got, they'll probably work damn hard and they'll make sure they give everything. And then at the end of it, if they impress you enough and they have enough drive, probably a lot of employers would say, wow, I really appreciate the fact they took their time, no pay, and now they're giving me everything. And this is someone I can look forward to working with.
Well, cleverly, if you think of it, and I've just joined the dots. I actually got holiday pay, if you think about it. So I did get
Oh, yeah, you did get paid.
But also, what I mentioned the Billy Barry thing is, I was really fortunate that there was a big project that I could attach myself to. I wasn't pitching against other researchers, which would have been difficult because in researchers, you go into a production meeting every morning and you've got you got one sentence for the producer to buy into your idea. And you literally go around the table. There was 8 of us when I got the job then. And you'd go, okay, I've got a one-armed banjo player from Kentucky who's written a song about his cat. And they go, oh, crap, next. And you go, okay, well, but he's married to a woman who's from Leitrim. Okay, get him. So you had to hone your craft to be able to pitch, elevator pitch. Now, that was a great thing to learn. But it's quite tricky to learn that creative craft of putting, like our producer used to say, if your idea cannot fit in the little square at the top of the TV column in the newspaper, then it's not what we're talking about. So your idea had to be, that's where I learned elevator pitching. And because you were fighting against 8 other researchers every day. But when I went in for the 2 weeks, I didn't have to do that because I just attached myself to a project. So I could shine without competing with people. So it was a confluence of a couple of lucky events as well. It wasn't just me. It was the fact that things were happening that I could attach myself to as well.
I believe a big part, if you think of just going for like any kind of job, nowadays everything is down to computers analyzing and choosing candidates, and people don't meet the real people behind the person. And so what happens is, if you are lucky enough to get into the last 10 or 50 or however many is in the pool, maybe then you can be seen. So I think in your case, you were there, you were being seen, your personality was coming through. So maybe not only as, pitching ideas as a producer and, a show inventor, they were looking at you and going, this guy could be a good host or a good producer or a good presenter. Sorry.
I think they were just a bit like, he's going to constantly keep turning up if we don't give him a go. I was like, hello, me.
How can we get rid of him?
How can we get rid of him? Let's burn him, see if he's rubbish. But I think, back to kind of what you are saying, and I'm going to slightly interpret it a little bit, but people work with people they like.
Yes, of course. Connections. It's always about connections.
Yeah. You don't work with people you don't like. So what it comes down to is, is this person, and this is the bias part of it, you go, is this person like me? Do they have, subconsciously we go, do they share values? Will we get on? And that's what I want to work with. Now, interestingly, and I tell this story when I'm doing my EDI talks, the Philharmonic Orchestra in New York, the New York Orchestra, were sued by 2 men of two black men who said they didn't get the job because they were black. And in
Yeah.
1967, they started doing blind auditions. And so then it worked. Now there's 50% female, but there's still very few black people and Hispanic people because the blind auditions remove the necessity to actually address bias. You have to address your biases and go, okay, I'm thinking about this
Yes,
just
yes.
from my perspective. But back in 1998, biases were fine.
At that time, like you mentioned, you know, when you went in there and you were openly gay. And so in those cases, when you come in and you
Yeah.
show your cards and you said, that's me, you're not hiding anything. And that, like the black man turning up at the door for the
Yeah.
auditions, people see who he is and they don't know the person
Yeah.
inside, but they see his skin color. So straight away, there's biases or prejudices there. So in that respect, if you're brave enough to say, this is who I am, you know, I'm not going to change things about me, but you have to get to know the real me and see what I'm capable of. But unfortunately, as you said, when it came to a lot of things in the past, they didn't look beyond skin tone.
And actually, you're right. And when it comes to the gay thing, I think I was actually the benefiter of positive bias, that people were really positive to me because at that time things were changing. And I remember one of the senior producers, her son, now married to a man, and I met him when he was about 6, and he was such a little gay. And I know he was positively bringing me in because she knew that was coming up behind her, and she was hoping somebody would do that for her son. So I was actually the benefit of all the work that David Norris and Tony Walt and all the activists had done was coming to fruition. We were to change the law. Irish people were done with the notion that it was legal. You know, the guy had been murdered in the park in Fairview, and people were just like, hang on a second, they're murdering people just because they get like. So the Irish people had started to change anyway, and I was lucky enough to be. My timing was very good as well. I was lucky to be born when I was born.
When you said something there a while ago when we started the conversation, and it shocked me because even though I know it, when you hear it again, you said it was illegal to be gay, and this is kind of like saying it was illegal to be Chinese or illegal to be black or illegal to be from Galway. They're crazy statements.
That should be illegal.
That should be illegal, yeah. That's why I'm in Spain. I'm on the run. So it's crazy, though, these statements, when we look back on it, isn't it, that you say it's illegal to be who you are?
I remember it so well. I remember coming out and going to a thing called the Gay Youth Group, which was not far from where I live now in Carmichael House, just
Yeah.
off Smithfield. And it had on the board, it was a local community resource centre. It still is, but it had one of these boards where you could change the numbers like a miniature, cinema board. And so it said, deaf people on a Sunday, gays on a Saturday. Like we were listed in order of almost. And so it was very interesting that we were in a catchment with the notion that in some way couched in it, oh, poor gays, but there was a support group there. And this gay youth group was for people under 19 who were coming out. And I met my two best friends at it on a Sunday, and they remain my best friends and still are. But we would sneak into the back of pubs because we'd be terrified the cops would see us, and we didn't know. And if they were in the bad mood and they didn't like the look of you, they could arrest you. Like, it was mad. Now, they all turned a blind eye, but at the time, the only thing about that I miss is it was a bit like Prohibition. There was a frisson of excitement about it.
Yeah. But it's kind of crazy because, if a guy is drunk and he takes off his shirt and he's walking down the street and the police say, oh, lewd behavior or this kind of stuff. So if two men or two women are openly kissing on the street or just frolicking, playing around, even drunk, and that time the police said, okay, we're going to arrest you under this article or, law, you kind of go, that's crazy. But they probably would get you under something else. They would say like lewd behavior or indeed exposure or something.
Imagine I was 22 when the law changed. I was a working adult. I finished college and finished school. I was living in London.
Yeah.
Like my two, weirdly and interestingly and fabulously, my mum's two younger sisters who are 66 now, both are married, both have two sons, are identical twins, and both are now married to women.
Wow.
And so we kind of knew they were gay when we were growing up. So it was already a kind of a bit of a template of acceptance in my family. It was never spoken about, but we knew. And their sons would tell us, and they lived in England. And mom's gay. We were like, oh, she's like.
People like that have a suspicion of these things, and of course, people say, oh, my gaydar is so spot on and everything. But, it's funny, isn't it? I remember doing a course one time with a guy. And, like that, you can meet some people who are gay and maybe more with guys, maybe they're more camp. But with this guy, I never had a suspicion in the slightest.
Yeah.
And we were talking about a pub in Galway City. And I was saying, oh, do you go there? And he said, yeah. And I said, I don't go to that pub much. Is it a good pub? Like, you're single. Is it good for meeting girls there? And he said, I wouldn't know. And then the penny dropped. And I was like, oh, I said, I said, I have to be completely honest. I never realized. And I said, but I actually think that's good because then you don't have these assumptions or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we're so progressive now in Ireland. It's so passe. I mean, I remember one of my friends in the mid noughties going, "Can we stop talking about you being gay?" Like people are over it now,
Yeah.
so it's really great. And I can, since the marriage equality referendum, there's been a complete sea change in this country in tolerance, and it's just like nobody really cares. I remember saying in an interview in about 2003, "Make hay, brethren, while the sun shines. Soon they'll realize we're just like them, normal."
And I always kind of believe that in the same way, it's nice to have more of a normality, I think, and maybe we're not fully there yet, where people never went around saying, he's straight. Nobody ever said that.
Yeah,
So you see that when they
yeah,
were
yeah.
putting gay people in the minority all the time, and even when it came to race, they would never say, he's black, or he's Chinese, or he's whatever. So it was always there was certain ways of speaking about things, and I wanted to get to one thing you mentioned there about
Yeah.
benefiting you when you went into TV land, because in a lot of TV roles, I can imagine
Hmm.
we see some presenters and they are more camp than others. So do you feel that when people go for certain types of shows, how they portray themselves is a benefit or a disadvantage?
So there's two sides to it. One is as I say, I was positively biased by senior execs who were a bit afraid of me actually because I was huge and they didn't know how to handle me. And so it's kind of like women looking for gender equality. They're like, oh fuck, what do we say to this one now? She's all over it. Middle-aged white men were like, oh my god, this camp fella, what we do with him. So in a way, I'd go, I want to do this, and they go, okay, you can do that. Like I organize this. I want to go into develop. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I kind of got my way and things like that. And I didn't ask for stupid stuff. It was kind of generally
Right.
on the money with stuff. But then in terms of presenting, I realized about 10 years into my career how judged I was for being camp or being a little bit fey. Because I didn't think I was that camp when I started. I wrote Wanderlust. It was a late night internet TV dating show, travel and dating show. And the premise, like, it was way before Catfish. And the premise was we'd go into a chat room with a single guy and a single girl. And sometimes we did gay guys and gay girls as well.
Yes, I remember it.
And we'd
Yeah.
chat. We had a chat room set up and we would set up dates and they would chat and they'd pick someone. And then, depending where that chat person was saying they were, we would then get on an airplane and fly and meet them. So we go all over the world and see if they were, like, the premise was there was two sides to the premise. They would show us, it was like weekend break. You need to know someone on the ground there to know where the good clubs
Yes.
are, the good museums are. You need a young person to tell you, because I always think club night, good ones, they die and they open and they die and they open. Only someone there will know where to go. You'd often be standing in a queue somewhere and go, "Are we in the right place?" Because you don't know the city at all. Whereas you'd be in Galway going, "No, you're in the wrong place. You need to be up." That was the premise. And then we added the dating thing into it. And so when I started presenting it, because it was dating, there was a risque element to it, right? So there was the wake up call. I mean, you'd never do it now, but we would knock on the hotel bedroom door to see if they shagged, if they spent the night together. I mean, I think what they led us away with murder. And I would be kind of being funny me at a party when I was presenting. When I had just come out a little while, like a few years beforehand. I was really enjoying being gay. I was really liking the sort of bitchy satire that kind of went hand in hand with being gay, which has kind of evolved, thankfully, now. And it's very 80s and it's very belongs to the Boy Georges of the world who are like, all right, girl, mean, bitchy 80s queens. But we were kind of replicating a bit. So it was kind of satire with it. And it was young gay when I was young and gay. It was innuendo. I used to say I have splinters under my names from scraping the bottom of the barrel of innuendo, right? I was literally innuendo. Because also, if you remember, you're at your sexual peak as well. Like, you're in your early 20s. Sex is pretty much at the forefront of your sex and partying and travel. So that's why I wrote, because I wanted to, not so much I had a partner then, but then I wanted to travel, I wanted to party, and sex was very important to people in their 20s. And you can see it now with young TV shows. It's like Love Island. It's all about sex, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like when you think of all these shows now, like Naked Attraction, and like I'm in Spain here, and some Spanish friends, I show them some British shows, and we have one friend, and she's like crazy, and she goes, "Let's watch the show with the tits and ass and pussy and everything." And I'm like, "Oh, Naked Attraction." She said, "Yeah, that one." She said, "We don't have anything." So we have like Naked and Afraid and Naked Dating, but she said this one where they're just choosing them on their genitalia. She said, "That's crazy."
It's mad. But that's what's important to you when you're younger. And That's normal. It's fine. So I suppose the dating sexual element of it was innuendo, double entendre, and so that's kind of what my style was. And I remember kind of growing tired of that style. So we've got presenters in Ireland now, brilliant young gay guys like James Kavanagh, James Patrice, and great young presenters who are really camp and do double entendre really, really well because that's the stage they're at. I've grown up now, and that's no longer important to me. And luckily, I've been allowed to grow up on television, and so people don't see me like that anymore, which is interesting because you'll remember, and I remember it.
Yes,
There's a
yes.
generation of us who remember that version of me on screen.
Where you are now with Keys to Your Life, when you're interviewing people and talking to them about their lives, I mean, if you were doing those double entendres, they probably would be a little uncomfortable because they'd be like, why are we
Awful.
doing this? You're talking about my mother and her battle with cancer, and when we're doing double entendres."
And you know what? My Sonia Lennon is my business partner in the fashion thing, and she's always laughing because of the background and because of people like our generation, who remember that of me. I had a lot like where people just didn't take me serious, and I had many. I'd be in a situation in a meeting or in a dinner situation with people who would look at me and go, "That's that camp fella. He's an idiot," right? And then we'd start talking, and I have had more than I can remember. 100 times people have said to me, "Wow, you have a brain." I've had that loads of times. It's like, I have a fucking brain. But it's like,
Wow.
take me seriously. And so I'm going to be like, oh my God, stop getting so serious because I got really caught up with being taken seriously about 5 years ago. I've chilled out. I've chilled out now.
Well, it is though, isn't it? Maybe sometimes you don't realize how people perceive you, and then in real life. But the public, I think, in every kind of way, can be a bit silly because people can say things like that to you. Oh, you have a brain, and by them saying that, you're kind of like, I do. Do you? Because those kind of questions and those presumptions are like something a child would say.
Yeah, and also people are very disarmed when they meet you and they recognize you, right?
Yeah.
They just to communicate, they say stupid shit all the time, right? They don't mean to, it just comes out because they're kind of, oh, you're a guy, do I know that person? And they're confused, and then they just say stupid shit. Like always, you get like, you're much taller, or you're much shorter, you're much skinnier, oh, you're much bigger.
Our characters, you see sometimes whether it's somebody who's a musician or a presenter,
Yeah.
and maybe they have a catchphrase or a line, and like I was reading a story last week about there's that heavy metal band System of a Down, and they had a song, and the first line was "Wake up." Da, 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 da. And the lead singer said he'd be walking down the street like totally relaxed, and fans will come up behind him and go, "Wake up." And he's like, "Jesus Christ, man, what the fuck are you doing?" And he said they're just taking it too far, but for them it's like, oh my God, he loved this, he's gonna love it.
Now, do you remember my catchphrase on Wanderlust?
I don't know if I do.
You will remember because people shout at me still, and I'm proud of it now, but I resent it. It was, I have a fiver in my hand and a fiver in my pocket. I'm going to the airport. I'm going like a rocket. And that, I'm leaving the chat room to making an edit point.
That was like a Magaluf expression, wasn't it?
They just said the very first time we recorded, and I said, fiver in my hand, fiver in my pocket, go to the airport, going like a rocket. They were like, that's great. And yesterday, somebody said to me, fiver in my hand. And I said, God, people still remember that. Now, when 4 years of doing Wanderlust, by year 2.5, I was fucking exhausted of people saying that to me because I was a bit embarrassed by. Funny enough, looking back, I'm so proud of Wanderlust now, but at the time it was late night, risque. Probably would prefer if your aunts weren't watching it, because I would say really shocking stuff or ask really shocking questions, or we talk, about penis size or what he likes big tits or like stuff that you just simply wouldn't say nowadays, right? And it was inappropriate, and so maybe I was right to be a little bit embarrassed by it. But now looking back, I'm really proud of the format. Was really clever, and we sold it all over the world, and we won awards for its interactivity because the internet was just starting out. And so now I'm proud of it, and that's who I was then. But key to it was when I was presenting and I was being that camp innuendo, that was who I was then.
Yeah, that was you. That was you.
Fun me. That was party me. I mean, I did have quiet me and go to bed me, and that, but that was me on form, being entertaining, which was part of surviving culture as a camp gay man. You were the funny one, and you hear that before all the time with comedians. And in fact, because of that, just a complete segue, I got an agent in London, and straight after Wanderlust, I did 2 years of Blind Date with Cilla Black. I did the ITV2 show. I did the first 2 seasons of Ant and Dec Saturday Night Takeaway, and then my agent at the time got money and was funding me to go to Edinburgh and do a comedy week in Edinburgh and try and win the Perrier. And once you win the Perrier, then you're in the big boys, right? And I remember sort of going, oh, okay, and getting pushed into this comedy thing. And one day I just said to her, look, I'm just kind of camp and kind of funny. It's not in me I don't need a group of people to laugh. I don't, and often I see that many presenters keep falling, young presenters, I see them trying to be funny and they just fall flat because they're not naturally funny. They're not comedians. They haven't honed their craft. So I'm always saying to young presenters, you just have to be nice.
Everybody knows somebody who can be funny at a party and they say they're a very funny person, but that doesn't mean they're comedians, because you can have moments when you're at a party and you get on a roll and you're kind of in that moment and you're living life. And but then if someone said, okay, that's very funny, you should go on stage, and you'd be like, I wouldn't know what to say. So there's always different types of people and different types of comedy.
And the business of comedy is a very serious business. I'm friends with quite a good few comedians, and they work so motherfucking hard with their gigs. They develop it and they try it and develop it, and they're driven by it. With that drive was never in me. The desire to make good people laugh was never in me. So
yeah, and I think it's something that if you get into it by accident and it works well and you like it, but yeah, that thing where someone's pushing you and you're not sure, and maybe it's not the right time either.
I had a gut instinct that just relying on my face and my voice to make a living was not going to be scalable.
Right.
I needed a product, either going to be a book or fashion or cushions I needed a product. And every young person I interview or comes to me for advice, and that happens quite a bit in telly, and they're trying to get in or whatever, I'm like, what's the long game product?
Yeah.
You always have that in your head. You won't know what it is now, but what can you sell what's going to give you passive income when you're unemployed, when you're not into religion? So I knew that comedy was not going to be that product for me, because I knew you would have to go into the top 4% to make that massive living that sustains you forever. Otherwise, you'll be in the fucking comedy cellar, like a lot of people who are just really jobbing comedians, and they work nights and weekends. And in your 50s, nights and weekends are not appealing. Right.
I think the problem is as well for all the younger people coming up, much like the BBC, ITV and RT and those and Virgin now and everything, the same people tend to get a lot of the gigs for, it's like this clique. But yeah, but I mean, you've worked your way into that and you know how to stay. Because think about it, if you weren't getting the gigs, you wouldn't be working. So, of course, you have to survive. You're the big shark now.
No, there's a big misnomer that you get a phone call, right?
Yeah.
You get plucked from the sky. A big broadcasting finger comes down and says, we want you.
Yeah.
It took me 7 years to get a job as a researcher. It took me 10 show reels to ever get in front of camera. And then all of a sudden I wrote Wanderlust. There was a gap in the schedule, and I picked up an internal phone because I was a researcher. So it was a perfect storm. It was 2609 was my number, so it didn't have the 203 in front of it. So the commissioning editor at the time, Claire Diagnan, saw internal number and answered. And I said, hello, it's Brendan Courtney from Open House. And she said, okay, what? I said, I have a format and you need it. She was like, you're funny, come over now. And I pitched it to her and she commissioned it.
Okay.
That never happens. But I thought that's how it happens. You just ring them and like it, right? Never happened again in my whole career.
Yeah, in a way, though, that kind of, being valiant and being brave and just being cheeky, it got you in the door. And when you did that as well with Wanderlust, because I can imagine sometimes, for example, you have a great idea and you bring it to them and they're like, yeah, who'd be great presenting that? And you'd be like, me.
She said, why should I let you, who's going to present it? She said, and I said, me, my idea. And she said, why would I let you present it? And I said, because you need new talent here. It is very old here. And she was like, well, we do need new talent. Are you any good? And I was like, I'm brilliant. And here I was like, I don't fucking know. And she said, okay, go and make a pilot. And I'll never forget it, right? It was the best weekend of my life. Me and Teresa Smith, who's still one of my best friends, she's now a commissioning editor in RTE, but she was a researcher as well. And we wrote the idea together. And the idea was fundamentally mine, but she came up with the name, actually, Wanderlust. And we wrote it. So we owned copyright together, and she ended up directing it. She had been a presenter, actually. She wasn't very good. Yeah. She ended up directing it. And so next of all, I ring her and I said, they're fucking giving us the money for a pilot. She's like, shut up. So we went to Toronto Production. She said, will you make this with us? And they were like, okay, great. So we brought them. Imagine the first commission was £1 million. We brought them. I just walked in the door and said, I've just got a commission. But first of all, they gave us 50 grand to go and make this pilot. But 50 grand is actually small budget for a TV show. But at the time, we were like, 50 grand. Someone's trusting us with 50 grand, right? So I assumed, like I always do, which is terrible Irish, high confidence, low self-esteem. I assumed we weren't going to get the commission. So just enjoy this weekend in Stockholm for fuck's sake.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Wait for the weekend, right? We're
yeah.
just too excited. We took the dates to parties and we made the pilot. And the very first time I ever appeared on RTE2 as a presenter, I'm walking down this big glass staircase, very nicely directed, and I'm going, welcome to a brand new series called Wanderlust on RTE2, right? And if you look closely, you can see that I'm a little bit drunk.
Yeah, no. Not just hungover, but drunk.
Well, I hadn't slept.
Yeah, yeah,
I was fine and I looked great. I sound great, but me and Teresa knew. Oh my god! And that was kind of to set the tone for the next 2 years of my life. We just had a great time doing it. Actually, in fairness.
yeah, and that's good. I mean, because I suppose like that, it's the people that take chances that get results, and sometimes you have to be cheeky and you have to push yourself forward. Because I imagine there's lots of people who pitch great ideas, but maybe they're not presenters. They've great ideas, and then they're thinking, I'd like to present it because it's my show, and they're like, you don't really have it. You don't have what we need. So I mean, for you to pitch it, for them to like the idea, and then like you as the presenter, that worked out really well.
Well, interestingly, my confidence in presenting had come from about a year or two beforehand, off the rails or head to toe as it was then. And imagine I went for this, and 17 years later, I took over off the rails. So it was head to toe. And my friend, I was working in the Dublin Fringe Festival, and I was really into my clothes. I always dress really snazzy, and I wear suits and funky shoes and blah. And this girl, still a friend of mine, said they're looking for a presenter on Off the Euro. You should go for that. And I was like, really? So I went and I paid £500 for a crew and got another friend of mine, and we both did show reel in the day, and we got it edited and sent it in. And I had this 8 audition process, and I kept getting through to the next round, and it got so painful. I really wanted it then. This is like 3 years before I got into television. I kept going and going, and I remember every day waiting on the letter, and then eventually I got a phone call, and Anne Roper, who's now retired, was head of docs, but she was head of lifestyle at the time, called me in and sat me down, and she said, and this was kind of spurred me on. So people like this are really important. I probably, if she hadn't have called me into that room, I wonder would I still be a presenter, because I was so she said, you didn't get it. And this guy called John Cleary, he was like a fucking supermodel, got it. And I went, okay, they went with the looks. I get it. It's a fashion program. And she said, but you really have it. You absolutely have what it takes to be a really good presenter. So do not stop. You will present. And I was like, you blow smoke up my arse. And she said, I only brought you in here to tell you that. Don't give up. You're really good. You just didn't get this one.
Yeah, I wasn't the right time. I mean, it's not a case of destiny. Maybe you hadn't evolved enough, or it wasn't the perfect moment for you to do that.
I describe my career as a series of dodging bullets, right? So that's the first bullet I dodged, because the next thing I did was I wrote a format that I owned. And then a couple of other big disappointments I got. So just one I can think of straight away. I was brought to England. I was lorded around BBC, and I was given my own Saturday night BBC Two show, and it was called Class of, and it would be Class of '92 or Class of '80. And I remember they developed the format, and it was a big studio audience, and it was just this class. They reunited them and talked. It was on nostalgia. And I remember shooting the pilot in a huge studio show, and they loved me, and it was all great. And the very last minute, they dropped me and put Zoe Ball in it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's television though, right? And you put
Yeah.
Stinger. It says Lily stings. You're like, fuck it anyway. And it bombed. It absolutely died.
It bombed. You felt kind of euphoric that it bombed. You were like, that could have been me.
Like Zoe Ball barely survived the dive, took a couple back. So there's moments that seem like massive disappointment, and you look back and you go, well, that was a real bullet there I dodged,
And that's it, isn't it? Because not everything will be successful, and sometimes people can take roles that can be bad for their career. And
also, there's 2 things, my 2 key pieces of information that I always keep at the fore of my head. First of all, nobody cares, right? So that's really important. So any public humiliation you feel is gossip for the people that they go home, they feed their kids, they go to bed. They don't give a shit about your. So nobody cares, and nobody cares comes from coming out at 19, recognizing it was illegal, but the rest of the world was wrong, and I was right to be me. So that's a great gift about having to come out. It's a pain in the ass, but it gives you this real confidence about nobody gives a shit, really. Only I care. And nobody cares, and everything ends. Everything, including life, ends.
and everyone is expendable in every type of job.
Everything ends, and so the first time your gig is cancelled, you're like, it's like someone stabbed you in the back. Feel personal, but then you kind of go, and then you grow up and you move through executive meetings or with people, and you watch people make decisions about other things that aren't involving you, and you see how many moving parts there are in decision making, and it's very rarely personal, very very rarely personal.
No, it's all everything is a vehicle that moves us on to
Yeah,
something else, and we're all parts of that machinery in the vehicle. But as you said, you can take it personally. But I think what happens is when you're placing yourself within that dream and you're saying, "Okay, that's what I've always wanted to do. This is the perfect thing." And maybe for some people, it's that big break because they feel like if I don't get this, there's nothing else. But there is always something else because if you work hard enough to get to that first place, you can
yeah.
work harder to get to the next place.
Also, if you attach yourself to getting on Love Island or getting in Big Brother, and that's going to be the be all and end all for you,
Yeah.
that's a lazy jump into Instagram followers and celebrity. But these kids kill themselves in the gym to look that hot and good, right? In a way, you're like, maybe this is, but just attaching yourself to one idea of what success looks like is a hiding to nowhere.
They're coming at it from the wrong angle because, as you said there, when with off the rails, this guy, you felt, oh, he's hotter than me or whatever. So the thing about it is when you're just basing it on looks and how people look, or if you're thinking I'm going to go on Love Island because I feel I look this way, I'm a gift to the people. Well, the problem is then how are you going to become a presenter when you have to wear your clothes, you have to have charisma, you have to have that personality to talk to people. So that always has to be there first. And that personality that shines through, you need that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mentioned Love Island twice. I absolutely hate Love Island. I think it's totally socially irresponsible as a TV program. It's not inclusive. It's not even diverse. It's just ridiculous.
I always say that to my wife when we're watching Love Island. I always say, in this modern day and age, and we've had tolerance for gay couples for so long, why don't they bring gay people on the show? Like, I remember a couple of years ago on Love Island, there was two women that formed a relationship that was kind of accidental. So I think they were like, oh, what are we going to do with this? But they never bring on, let's say, a guy or a girl and say, I quite like that girl. I mean, it would be so much more entertaining if it was very random, as if anything could happen.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And that's why I kind of resent it that it is so powerful. And then you hear of people my age whose teenagers watch it, so therefore they watch it and they get sucked along with it. And I'm like, it's such a bad example to set your teenagers that this is the idea of success, walking around in your bikini on a TV show. It's not.
And that's why you have, all these young guys pumping weights all the time because they want to look like that. And the girls, I always say, I talk to people who work in gyms and they say all girls work on is their ass nowadays because they all want to have
Yeah.
the Kim Kardashian ass, and they see Love Island and there's kind of this perfect model of what something should be. And then they're also thinking, oh yeah, I can be a model and a presenter and I can work my way up and be like somebody else. And unfortunately, I don't think it's saturated.
Yeah.
There's too many people want that now.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I observed this 10 years ago, maybe 20 years, 15 years ago, is that we're all content creators now, right? So the dynamic has flipped in that traditionally you turn the TV on and people like me would entertain you and you'd scroll to it. Now, there is radio and audio has shown since COVID, there's a real, people want to be passively entertained. They don't always that's why Netflix most used button is surprise me, because they want to tell me, show me what I want to watch sometimes, because that's deciding to find it. So we're fundamentally quite lazy when it comes to that, but there is definitely a wall of content that's being built, and cynically as well, TikTok being the worst version of it, because TikTok is the domain for the show off, right? And I would have been on TikTok loads if I was 14 or 15. Of course I would. That's natural, right? But it's the domain for attention. And what's interesting about TikTok is, and why I worry about the future of these young people who are buying into it, you're actually making content for advertisers. They're doing the Dorito dance, I'm not Doritos, but just an example. I'm making that.
Of course.
You do these dances with music. That's advertising.
You're making free commercials.
You're making free commercials. Everybody's making free commercials.
You imagine when they see those, I imagine there's thousands of them and they see a really good one and they're like, that's actually good quality, 4K, best equipment, and the girl looks really good. We don't need to pay them anything.
Well, they don't pay them anything.
No, they don't.
There's an amazing. Did you watch The Social Dilemma?
Let me see. Did I?
Tristan Harris about.
Oh no, I didn't actually watch it yet. I've been meaning to watch that for a long time.
They have a podcast called Your Undivided Attention, which is amazing. Which is basically it's about the prediction economy. So basically, they not only look for our attention, the attention economy, but they can predict how we'll behave, and they sell that data now, and they sell it to advertisers, and they can pinpoint you or me with stuff that predict that we will buy. It's amazing, right?
Did you know that the algorithm in China for TikTok is completely different to what we have? In China, they actually show inspirational and educational videos to the people, young people and adults. They learn from it. There's not like, people be doing pornographic dances or sexual routines or all that kind of stuff. There's not silly pranks. Everything is something of value for people's lives. I mean, it can entertain a little bit, but then what do they give the West? All the content to get you addicted.
All the shite, yeah.
All the shite, yeah. That to me as well kind of spells out something there, because it's nearly like they're trying to manipulate how the Western the society grows up.
We're falling down a Warren hole here.
Yeah, of course.
The reason Trump got into power, the reason Brexit happened, is because a load of very clever analytical people bought advertising and directed at people who were on the fence, and they voted one way. The reason Brazil is divided 50-50 between left and right is because of Facebook ads and Twitter ads. So we have to regulate social media. But interestingly, since COVID, we have seen numbers in television on terrestrial television have gone way back up. Passive, for people have cancelled their subscription. We've seen that since COVID. They've gone back to listening is huge. Audio, podcast, as we know, audio, but it's massive. Radio is massive. I've just been covering for Ryan Tubridy on Radio 1. Their numbers are out the door. So passive entertainment is very important to people, I think. And that's good, because it means I feel a disconnect happening with smartphones. I feel people, and my brother-in-law said it to me really interesting. He said, they're no longer fabulous or interesting. They're just a computer in your pocket.
Yeah, and they're kind of becoming a little outdated, aren't they? So we've done it all.
They make banking easy. I can listen to my music. I can do a podcast. But do I want them mapping everything I do and sending me ads for earwax cleaner? No.
When you have those moments, I only really got TikTok when I started kind of doing the podcast, but I never really used it that much. But then I found I was using it more, and then I was like, why am I on it for an hour? Or, it was like, it kind of trapped you. So a couple of weeks ago, I just deleted it, and I'm like, wow, I think I've gained an hour or two back in my day every day.
Well, because of my job, I'm on all social media. And also, like my dad, I'm quite interested in technology. I'm fascinated by it as well. So I like the social network, the humane technology. I love that. I'm fascinated by attention economy and that stuff we're just talking about, Claire. But I have a TikTok account because I'm on TV in Ireland.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
If you look at it, it's quite interesting. I have about 3,000 followers, but very little. I just rehash stuff for Instagram for advertising for TV, right? Guess how many people I follow?
I don't know.
None.
Zero. None.
None. And I love that. The algorithm's like, what the fuck is this dude doing?
Come on, pick one. They're like, just pick one,
No.
Let's change kind of, tack a little bit here. So let's talk about the fashion side of your life. And when you look at shows like Off the Rails and Head to Toe and all of these, but when you and Sonia Lennon, when you kind of started doing fashion together and you decided to set up a company, how important is that in your life nowadays?
It's one of my passions in that it all ties into everything. I always think at the center of everything I did was fundamentally about equality. So Wanderlust helped people who didn't travel, who hadn't gone partying, or hadn't had sex.
Yeah.
It was about giving them an opportunity to do that, and myself in the journey, right? And so when we did Off the Rails, it wasn't about telling people what to wear. We only ever helped people who asked for our help, right? Who were lost a little bit. And we'd say things like, we're not psychologists, but a good hair day is better than a bad hair day. So let's start with that. So we'd start with the aesthetic. And that was always the impetus to push people to leave bad marriages, to set up their own businesses, to, embrace the empty nest situation they were in and get a part-time job.
That makes me laugh because I'm thinking about, you said there, what was the name of the guy in England? What was his name? Doc One, yeah. But it was so funny because, he'd be saying you're wearing the stripes the wrong way, they're not accentuating your body. But you wonder then, would that woman or man go home and say, I was wearing my stripes the wrong way, I'm leaving you?
Fundamentally, what it was about creating a little resurgence of confidence for people. So we saw that that's what we were actually doing. Wasn't really about the clothes or the fashion. And the fashion side of things is like football for me. I'm fascinated by the theatre of it, the stupidity of it, the insanity of fashion, the nonsense that it's art. It isn't, it's art, and I'm a designer and I'm a qualified designer. It's not. It's commercial art. It's like graphic design. You need to the shit, no point.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of bullshit around that I quite enjoy. tearing it down and analyzing it. So that's fashion is one part of it. But the confidence and equality piece was about boosting a generation of women who probably had fewer choices than their younger sisters or than their daughters, who come through an Ireland that was very repressive of women, and so they arrive at our door, and we would go, right, let's get your confidence back up. So that was the main aim of it, and so we decided to make clothes that did that. So confidence, equality, and color and empowerment are our pillars, and everything we design, we go, will that give confidence? Does it empower? Is it comfortable? Does it have good color? And so that we have this. Once you have a set of values, everything falls out of that in a really natural way. So we started the business, I think, 14 years ago, 13 years ago. We're 12 years ago, I think, and we were 5 years independent, and that was really hard. Like that's literally singing the theme tune, writing the theme, selling the theme tune, doing everything, and then we licensed to Dunn's 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago. And so that's democratized it and made it more accessible in terms of cost, which is even more important to us as well, that people can buy it and afford it. And so, yeah, it's a very important part. And myself and Sonny do a podcast now, and that podcast is in season 9 now, was to add value to the women who buy our clothes. We've been called the Thinking Woman's Take a Break. So we talk about boundaries, relationships, alcoholism, nightmares, but we always call it the Thinking Woman's Guide to Boundaries, Thinking Woman's Guide to Nightmares, Thinking Woman's Guide to the Afterlife. And we gas away. We have Sonia brings in a few facts and blah blah blah, but it's always with the purpose of putting her in her ear and giving her a giggle for 25 minutes. So God has a purpose for that woman who we feel doesn't get paid equally as men, is probably from slightly of an age where she remembers being repressed, has been over-sexualized by media. It's turning into gender equality is massively on the horizon for Ireland, specifically to follow the Icelandic model. And we believe we have a product that ties in with that.
Yeah. And it's funny actually, because when we look at fashion in general, I always kind of think that when you see, fashion shows, Milan, Paris, all of these things, and these models are stick thin, and people say they're not real women. They're real women, but they're not how the average woman looks.
No, they're not.
I always think that those shows are more created for women to buy clothes. They probably don't buy those clothes, but when you ask a lot of men, what's your kind of definition of a woman with a good figure? They kind of say curvy, but they might look at those models and say they're too thin.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of illusion and a bit of a lie that we've been led to believe that's how women look, when in reality, women see it one way and men see it a different way.
That's exactly it. But they're not trying to sell to men.
No, they're trying to sell to women. Exactly.
But they're trying to sell to execs. And there is, it depends on the garment, but very often there was a theory, and I don't buy into it, by the way, that basically clothes look better on thinner, taller people.
Yes, of course.
There's a theory. That's a theory, not true. That means that the garment is more important than the person. And that's an old way of thinking about fashion. The person is more important than the garment. The garment should fit the person, not the person fit the garment. And so fashion has been designed to make us believe that the garment is more important than the person.
That's kind of like, it's okay to have a yellow Lamborghini, but a yellow Ford Cortina mightn't look as good.
I don't know if that's quite what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like the clothes are the main thing.
Yeah.
The person wearing them has to make the clothes look good.
Yeah, it's secondary. But that's bullshit. And people have a confidence about that now. And you're seeing even young women particularly going, fuck that. These clothes have to work for me. I don't work for the clothes.
Yeah, of course. And then, what's quite interesting, you see those shows, but then when you see Victoria's Secret, then the women are curvier, and then it's like, oh, men will watch that maybe. You understand? So it's contradicting itself a little bit.
Victoria's Secret models aren't curvier. They're just naked.
They're more glamour models than some of the other ones, maybe.
They're average height, 5'11". They're tall, thin, very few. There's no curvy models in Victoria's Secret either. I actually hate Victoria's Secret. I can't believe success. It's just the over-sexualization of young women for the benefit and amusement of everybody else just drives me crazy. I'm like standing outside huge Victoria's Secret shop going, really?
Yeah. And actually recently myself, my wife were in a club, and it was like 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and the club was busy. And the video screens in the club were showing Victoria's Secret show, and Lady Gaga was singing. And I was like, well, this is weird, because we're in a club and they're showing a Victoria's Secret show.
Yeah, no, it's definitely weird. But then again, neo-feminism and Beyonce feminism would say a woman is totally entitled to embrace her sexuality and want it.
Of course.
So I would approve of that as well. But I just think the over sexualization for the purposes of sale of a product can be questioned. That's all.
Exactly, yeah. So let's just talk quickly about going back to the EDI and the inclusion and so on and diversity. So, you do a lot of talking about this, and, you had your own, I know you had your own homophobic attack on the streets, and you've kind of been on the really blunt edge of homophobia in that respect. But I'm sure you've seen it in so many other areas of your life, not just in that physical attack, but as in verbal attacks and how people say things and everything. So, how do you think that Ireland has changed in that respect?
Well, it has changed massively. We are the only country in the world. We banned plastic bags first. We banned smoking in public areas first, and we legalized gay marriage
Yeah,
by popular demand. Like, we're amazing. We're a deadly little country. It has changed completely. The atmosphere has changed. But I tell you, what I really noticed around that time, I was attacked. I went public because it was pre-marriage equality, and I thought I'm going to use this to get sympathy for people to see what happens to us. Because what was really interesting is all my sound, nice heterosexual friends were like, that shit still happens. And like women being pinched or groped or
or catcall.
we gay people just learned to live. You saw a group of lads you crossed the road. You just learned to live with it. So straight people were like, "Oh, you live with that," and we were like, "Yeah, you kind of learn to live with it, and you just roll around it, and you just kind of ignore it because it becomes threatening, and you become less afraid of it because you get desensitized to it." But we live with that every day, and so many people were like, "Oh God, I didn't know that." And so, yeah, and then like I said, and the way women relate to us is women live with constant harassment and constant we put down,
Yeah,
and getting off a night bus at night, nervous. Women won't walk home at night on their own. That's just how they live. And so lots of women and gay men were like, well, actually, you know what? Fuck that. We're not living like that anymore. We're going to come out and tell you this is what it feels like. So Ireland really acknowledged that very quickly and thought, oh, these are personal stories. This is my hairdresser, my nephew, my son, my neighbor, my brother. These people are living with this repression. Right, let's just vote. And even if the bullies in school still pick on the little boy who's a bit fey, the teacher can say, the law is on our side. These people are equal. Shut up. So I don't believe in marriage or the patriarchy is a thing. I think that should be disbanded as an idea, but that's another question. But I want the right to change my mind and get married if I want to.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, and it's like nowadays. I think there's a lot of pressure on children and teenagers. If they make a decision to be transgender or gay or any kind of other sexuality, I always think that's fine. Let them make them decisions, but let them change back, because we can say I'm going to work as a fitness instructor, and you do it for 2 years, and then you go, I don't like it. So you have the choice to go back to do what you were doing before, and that should be the same with things in our life, because you're at an influential age where you're basing your decisions on how you feel. You're basing your decisions on your peers and all of these things, but then things can change, and we should have the right to be who we want and go back and change.
Yeah, I mean, so particularly around the trans issue, I don't talk about that, funny enough, because I'm not trans. And I find, I always say, if you're going to talk about an issue of a repressed minority, you need a repressed minority member at the table to tell you how it's. I think that's really important. But I do, the right to choice is the most important right for humanity.
Of course, yeah. Let's just talk about your books, because you're an author as well. And so you've written a few books, Love Your Look, Your Best You, and so on. When you go to write a book, are you kind of always coming at it from one angle, or are you thinking?
They're kind of bad examples because basically we were doing Off the Rails and Gok was doing How to Look Good Naked, and he was on his seventh book, Ghost, written by a woman called Angela Butolph, who's a friend of mine. And she said, you should do a book. So I came to Ireland back with the idea and said, Gok is doing this incredible book, so I accompany the TV series, let's do a book. And they said, absolutely. And I said, and I have this woman, Angela Butolph, who write the book. And they were like, no, pal, in Ireland, you'd be laughed out of the publishers. You need to write the book. So myself and Sonia wrote both those books. It's a process. We wrote them. I was living in London in between shooting online. They both did really well. They were number one at Christmas, and that was great. But they were a book to accompany the CV series. So they're kind of about tips and tricks on how to get your confidence and use colour and blah, blah, blah. I'm now writing a book on my own called Mammy Issues, which is the history of Irish women's reproductive rights told through the eyes of my mother. And that's a proper dive into research and then write sort of entertaining, fun story that my mum's engagement with reproductive rights throughout her life. So they're very different feeling. And actually, because we did the Masters last year and I had to write 20,000 word thesis, it gave me the confidence now to sit down and write a book myself. That was a labour of love. That was academic writing. It was a pain in the ass. like it got really difficult. And then now I'm in a situation where I'm writing something I love and I'm interested in it.
It was training.
Not that I wasn't interested in it, but academic writing is really hard.
No, and you can find a new way and you learn how to do things again. I'm going to let you go, but I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been lovely to chat to you. Maybe we'll get you on again some other time and we'll have a longer chat on lots of issues,
It was a great chat.
Can you tell us just, last thing, obviously you've keys to your life, but have you other new projects coming up as well?
So we're starting now, Keys to My Life Series 4. We start casting now. We're actually in the process of casting. We start shooting next month, actually. So that's happening straight away. And then I've been doing a lot of radio. I've been covering for Ryan Tubridy on Radio 1. I've done it 4 times now. And so that's kind of a nice little craft to get. Live radio, and it's the gay burn hour, so it's a big hour. And I feel very fortunate to do that. And then I'm writing this book, and I hope when the book is finished, I'm going to do a book tour. But I want to do a book tour of universities in America to show how stupid it was to roll back Roe and Wade. And that the premise of my book is don't fuck with women.
That would be a great title.
Really bad for everybody.
You could release Mammy Issues and then do a second volume called Don't Fuck With Women Part 2. And they'll be like, where was Part 1? Oh, that was Mammy Issues.
Yeah.
So listen, it's been great to talk to you. It's nice to hear your views and all of this. Well done on your career. And I applaud you for your bravery in the beginning days of your career and taking those steps that got you to where you are. So well done. You've been a great entertainer so far, and we look forward to many great shows from you in the future.
Thanks so much. I love you chatting to you. Thanks a million.
Brendan Courtney, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Brendan Courtney. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and it was nice to hear about your varied career. And we've seen those shows all through the years being very successful shows, and you've been a very successful presenter. And so well done, and congratulations on all the work you've done so far. And we look forward to new shows, and we have to commend you on your new show, Keys to Your Life. Such a fabulous show, and we look forward to more from you, Brenda. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody, I'm glad you are enjoying the content we're giving you so far. And if you'd like to hear more, stay tuned. We have some fabulous guests in this season 3, and we hope you come back, and we hope you're enjoying everything you're hearing so far. So if you are, please subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you very much. So my name is Simon Kay. This is the Collective Whisper podcast. Until the next time, take care of yourself, your friends, and your family, and all the people you love. Bye-bye.